I want to reach out to a younger audience for a minute. I want to talk about the good old days. My first video game system was a ColecoVision when I was 9. After being reassured for an entire year that there was no way Santa would deliver a Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas, that year it miraculously appeared underneath the tree. You know the console: Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, Zelda, Contra. Our first desktop computer was an Amiga. It came with games like Battle Chess, Blood Money, and Earl Weaver Baseball. Each, the console and the computer, had their place, and there were things that the other could not do. In the late 90s, I had a Windows computer and a Nintendo 64. By the time the PlayStation 2 came out in the early 2000s, forecasting which console was going to provide the most satisfying gaming experience became a legitimate dilemma.
Quick poll: PS4 or Xbox One? Raj?
Xbox One.
Penny?
Huh?
Leonard?
PS4.
Wallowitz?
Both great.
Bernadette?
I like the Wii.
But there were always two very separate and distinct areas for gaming. There was the computer and there was the console. Generally speaking, computers always had the better games because computer hardware was more robust and could handle bigger games. But the console was there for its social component, the multiplayer games. Dr. Mario and the gaming controllers for consoles were more well suited to sports games and adventure games. Like I said, each had their place. Civilization, being a major long-standing AAA title, was a gaming domain reserved for the PC. Game speeds weren't really introduced until Civ IV. Before that, I fully expected a game of Civ to involve multiple long sessions, and it wouldn't be completed for at least a week. With Civ IV, I could play a full game in a couple of days, but 2 to 3 weeks still stands for me as the perfect Civ pacing if I'm fully invested in the game. Times have changed. Gaming has changed. I've changed. What I want from my Civ games hasn't. Welcome to Civilization Stories, where we explore alternatives to history through the lens of the world's most addictive video game. Is the world a better place in which to live now than it was yesterday? Any yesterday, but not any specific yesterday? Ask Steven Pinker, and the answer is yes. Spend your day doom scrolling on Twitter or Facebook, and then maybe no. The truth is always, well, some things are better now for some, and some things are worse now for some. Progress isn't linear. New insights or inventions offering solutions to problems often do little but unearth new questions and create new problems. So let me ask the question: are video games better today than they were before? The answer is both yes and no, and here's why. A few years ago, I read a book called The Dorito Effect. In it, the author told the story of the chicken of tomorrow. The chicken of tomorrow was a contest held in 1948 to find which breeder could design the perfect chicken. You see, before 1948, there were several breeds of chickens. Some were good for frying, some were good for baking, some were good for boiling, and so on. But there were hundreds of types of chickens. The criteria for determining the winner of the chicken of tomorrow were things like growth rate, feed conversion efficiency, meat yield, and uniformity of shape and size. Factors like flavor and nutrient quantity were not considered. The modern chicken that you now buy from the grocery store is actually a descendant of the chicken of tomorrow. The rest are more or less extinct. In the book, the author interviewed older folks who bemoaned what had happened to the flavor of chicken from when they were kids, stating that chicken just doesn't taste like it used to. When I read this, I called bull. So I went and I looked it up. And it's true. The Chicken of Tomorrow contest, that is. I can't confirm the veracity of whether chickens were tastier before 1948 or not. I wasn't alive. But I'll tell you something I do know for sure. Pizza was better before 1995. My choice of date is a bit arbitrary, I will admit, but my argument here is anecdotal and something that only folks of a certain age will appreciate. But this essay is meant for you young folks out there, so listen up. I remember when a Pizza Hut opened up in Montreal near where I grew up. It was a pretty big deal. Before that, for pizza, there was just the local pizza joint, with a name no one remembers. I can still remember the taste of that pizza from the local place down the road from my house in the suburbs. When they served it to our table, I remember thinking it was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. When my father pulled a slice from it to serve me, we all watched in awe as the cheese stretched up to the ceiling. When my father took me to that Pizza Hut for the first time, he ceremonially pulled on a slice and stretched that cheese up toward the ceiling as high as he could. When I got a little older, I could weasel a $5 out of my pop, hop on my bike, and ride down to the local pizza and subs joint that was part of a Montreal franchise called Mike's. When I returned home with my pizza, I would pull the first slice and watch the cheese stretch to the ceiling, or at least as high as I could reach. By the late 90s, when I was studying in university and responsible for buying my own pizza, I had to be a little bit more pragmatic. The Mikes near my parents' old house went out of business, and Pizza Huts went up everywhere, along with competing fast food joints like Pizza Pizza, Domino's, Boston Pizza, along with 101 independent fast food shops that all sold pizza as well. When Pizza du Parc's cheese did not stretch to the ceiling, I didn't care because I was in the habit of consuming 10,000 calories per day and I was getting 2 mediums for $8. But I did notice that, unlike when I was a kid, every pizza started to taste the same. Eventually, I started to pay attention and noticed that I could no longer stretch the cheese to the ceiling. Before the age of 16, every pizza's cheese stretched to the ceiling. Since then, I can scarcely remember a pizza I've eaten that does. I even went through a period where I would order pizza and ask for extra cheese. What a joke. Mo money, but no mo cheese.
Hello, every pizza place.
So, what's happened to pizza? Did pizza change? Did I change? Here's my theory. When I was a kid, although pizza wasn't new, the fast food pizza franchise was. Remember, I grew up at a time when McDonald's was a legitimate restaurant. They actually cooked the food there. They made hamburgers and fries. It wasn't health food, but it wasn't the schlock that you get today. And a meal at a McDonald's was significantly cheaper than a meal at a fancy restaurant. So when the fast food pizza chains got introduced, you could get a pizza that was essentially the same as the one from the mom and pop restaurant for a lot less money. Fast food pizza chains were also quick and efficient. They stole customers from the mom and pop shops who eventually went out of business. Hey, maybe supply chains also changed. Perhaps the price of milk products went through the roof. All I know is that fast food pizza joints became the norm rather than the exception. Pizzas everywhere were cooked in the same oven because of safety regulations, and every pizza was topped with precisely weighted ingredients until every fast food pizza restaurant now serves a pizza that is nothing more than a minimal viable product because people will still buy it and because it's more profitable in the long run. But Husky, you say. My favorite pizza restaurant doles out the absolute best bespoke, fully loaded, artisanal Neapolitan-style pizza I've ever tasted. So what are you talking about? And that's exactly my point. That used to be pizza. Whether it was from an authentic Italian pizzeria or from the local Pizza Hut, that bespoke, artisanal Neapolitan-style frisbee you're paying $30 for used to be just pizza. Before Delissio, Dr. Utger, and the other 1,000 frozen pizza brands that are out there, pizza from the frozen food aisle was a joke that nobody bought. Now, that's just pizza. Pizza used to be built on a perfectly designed, light and fluffy crust that was somehow soft and could still hold the weight of endless toppings. There was no need to put cheese into a crust as an option because nobody ever looked at a pizza and went, there's not enough cheese. Pizzas oozed with drippings and oils from meats and vegetables that were actually fresh. And yeah, it came from a mom and pop shop that was cooked just for you. But so was every pizza, even the ones from chains. So you're probably asking yourself, Husky, what the heck does this have to do with civilization? I'm asking young folks out there to take it from someone who's played every Civ game since the first. Civ VII is the video game equivalent descendant of the Chicken of Tomorrow. It is 2025's minimum viable pizza. It might be fine for 2025, but it sure don't taste like it used to. So, who's to blame? Is it Sid Meier? Firaxis? 2K? Why doesn't Civ taste as good as it used to? I've been doing some soul searching and I think I found the culprit. It's this guy. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'd play on the Switch, well then congratulations. You broke Civ because it is designed for you, and that is why it now tastes like it's not topped with cheese that stretches to the ceiling. You'll never know how good you could have had it. But Husky, you might ask, why so much hate for the Switch? Now Civ players can play with their games in their pocket and play on the bus or on an airplane. To which my answer is, and I repeat, you'll never know how good you could have had it. Because you see, in 2016, Civ VI initially launched like every other Civ before it on PC as its primary platform. A couple of years after its initial launch, with significant advancements made in upgrading the hardware of the Switch, 2K ported the game over to the Switch and its popularity exceeded expectations. Civ V and Civ VI did also have versions for consoles like Xbox and PlayStation, but it was the sales performance of Civ VI on the Switch that undid everything. Civ 4 was the last of the Civ titles to be made exclusively for PC, which is probably why it is still the favorite of longtime Civ players who still remember when cheese on a pizza stretched to the ceiling. What used to be two separate gaming experiences has been thrown into a single, minimal viable product designed for a device that fits in your pocket. I remember when Nintendo released the Game Boy and you could play for the first time a real video game in the palm of your hands. Was it as good as the console? No. The Switch is the descendant of the Game Boy, and wow, is it an improvement. So are video games better now than they were? In that sense, yes. A Nintendo Switch gives players the opportunity to have a way better handheld gaming experience than the Game Boy could have ever provided. But is that how Civ was meant to be played? No. Was it the device the designers of Civ 7 were marketing to when they made the game? Yes. Which is why players on Switch now represent, according to some sources, a third of the market for Civ 7, and where sales on PC only represent 17%. So when I point out the poor sales performance of Civ 7 according to the number of players on Steam, and folks comment on my videos by saying that I'm not considering all platforms, they are actually right. But when they can't understand why Civ 7 gets so much hate, well, I've been trying to articulate that for a while now, and this essay is just another attempt at me trying to understand what went so wrong with this title. Let me know what you think. Have I hit on one of the core problems behind how and why Civ 7 became a minimal viable product? I will continue to speculate what Civ could have been were it designed exclusively for PCs and targeted to players willing to sit at their desk for weeks because of how immersive the game was. In the meantime, you know what? There are some 4X and grand strategy games out there that are designed exclusively for the PC. As a long time, nay, eternal Civ fan, it is hard for me to say, but perhaps it's time to see if their cheese stretches to the ceiling. I have no desire to play a 4X game for 20 minutes while I ride the subway, but I do want to get lost for hours, days, weeks, in a world where I can build an empire to stand the test of time. Maybe one of those other titles out there will give me the opportunity to do that. Thanks for watching, and remember to keep playing and making your own story, your own amazing path through history. I'll see you next time.